Sunday night, 9 o'clock. Welcome to All Lacrosse Live. I'm Gary Groob in Toronto, Canada. With me, I have Shawn Slaght in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. How are you, Shawn?
Doing very good. Thanks, Gary.
And in Connecticut, I have Muffler Mike Kostiuk. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing great, Gary.
Awesome. You guys had a good week?
Yeah, you
Yes.
bet.
Cool. We caught up with you there, Shawn. It's cold here, man. Never mind the
Probably getting my kind of weather.
Miami Beach weather. It's cold here. I know this because I spent the last 3 or 4 hours at an Argos game at the Eastern Final where they won, which is the only thing that kept me warm. Beating Montreal to make it to the Grey Cup next week. But holy jumping, was it windy. Man, I watched one of the kicks, and the thing went about 12 yards forward and 14 yards to the side. And then with the penalty, they actually wound up a yard worse than before they took the kick. You can't make this stuff up, man. I tell you. Luckily for us, weather. That's what I mean, man. Like Winnipeg won their game, and they're used to crappy weather, and the Grey Cup is in Saskatchewan, so that's not going to be an advantage to Toronto. That's for sure. That could be a long day. So next week, if I come on with a long, we didn't win. Holy smokes! There's a John sighting. Hey. How are you, John?
Hey, John.
Don't forget, in about 25 minutes, we're going to have John on with another version of Inside the Box, which should be exciting to say the least. It always is informative and enlightening, and rather amusing to go with that. Few things that we had going on this week. We had a lot of transactions, guys. We had a lot of NLL transactions. We started on the 7th, really, and Vancouver did a few house cleaning things. Mason Pym, Dylan Robinson, Nick Preston, Dallas Wade, Cal Slade, Gore Phillips, all gone from the active roster. So that brought them down to about 74 that were left. They placed Connor Goodwin on the active roster from the physically unable to perform list. Also, they had placed Tyler Hammer Jackson, Anthony Kellenich on the active roster from the injury reserve. If you thought that was it, nope. Vancouver placed Ethan Woods, Aiden Solomon, Brandon Goodwin, Ryan Martell on the injured reserve from the active roster. They were busy. Big news came out of Toronto, though, also that day, and that was Chris Corbeil. He tore the pec, and anybody who's done that knows that's not fun, and that's got a little bit of a healing process ahead of him. So we won't see him in a Rock jersey probably until the new year has already been upon us, and we're starting to write the correct number on our checks. That's the old school ATMs, guys. But yeah, that's a big blow to the Toronto defensive core. Is that be all end all? That they want to do? I'm back. my internet's playing jokes on me again, so bear with me. If it's not Shawn, it's me. You know, it's a Canadian thing. We like to play around with our internet. But the Rock also placed Jason Noble on the holdout list from the injury reserve list, and they did sign Zach Mans to a 3-year agreement. So some positive on that. But yeah, that corpse thing is a blow. What do you think, guys? Shawn?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a blow. Is it the be all end all? Is that going to end their season? No. They got plenty of depth on that defensive end, but I know as a rush from the rush side, we were really looking forward to seeing Corbs, regardless of what jersey he was in. But it's going to wait a little bit longer, I think.
Yeah. Oh, look, John's back. John retired. Oh my! He's in good form tonight, eh? Patrick, how are you doing?
Like idea, Pat.
You know, we're going to do this one from a steam room, I think, soon because my. And look over here from John, Gray froze. Thank you for that, John. Those you aren't playing the inside joke game. All right, Albany released Luke Van Scheppen from their active roster. That's a little bit of a surprise, but I'm pretty sure that he's going to wind up on an NLL roster before this is all said and done. Halifax placed Justin Martin, Colin Hinton on physically unable to perform lists. Here's another one from Halifax. Placed Austin Shanks, Braden Hill on the holdout list from the active roster. That one's interesting. I have a feeling it has to do with some work commitments. Austin Shanks, he started up with the Toronto Fire Department, I believe. So, I don't think you can dictate your schedule as a rookie. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would think if a move like that, if anything, I mean, it's going to hurt their offense a bit, but it's at least going to resolve kind of the glut of players they have on the right side.
True, for now.
Sure.
He's going to come back at some point.
They're going to have Boucher, and they're going to have Reese Dutch, and they're going to have Clark Peterson, among others. So,
but it's still, he was their offense for a good chunk of last year.
Yeah. I mean, he kind of did carry the team the second half of the year.
Yeah.
So.
The Halifax Thunderbirds also placed Keelan Peelan on the injured reserve list from the active roster. They signed Marty Hill, Kevin Hill, Darius Anderson, Riley Johnson, Tyler Brown to one-year agreements. So they were fairly busy this week. If you thought that Vancouver was through with what they were doing, no. They released Mitch Gustafson from their injured reserve list. That's interesting. It doesn't say if he went anywhere other than he's off of the injured reserve list. I'm thinking he's off the roster altogether. Now, he spent a cup of coffee in Toronto, never really cracked a lineup here. I watched him in some summer ball, and there's some really upside to his play, and there were some things he needed to work on to stay. So I don't know if he's going to wind up in an ALL arena near you sooner or later, but my bet is that, yes, that's where he's going to wind up. Rochester was busy also. They released Vaughn Harris, Jake McNabb, Kevin McNally from their active roster. A little surprised about Vaughn Harris because, he's had some pretty good years.
Yeah, that's the biggest surprise for me. I mean, he's obviously bounced around a few teams: Calgary, Buffalo, Philly. Might have spent time in Colorado as well.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a pretty serviceable defender. He has the ability to push ball in transition, and he can take spot faceoffs. So, it's a little baffling why he can't seem to kind of hold down a regular starting spot on a roster. He seems to bounce around an awful lot for someone of his skill level. Yeah,
it's a little puzzling. They signed Holden Kintoy to a one-year agreement, which I think they had to. There's no way they could have let him go free.
Oh, yeah.
No.
He is such a big part of their offense, as Peterborough has shown. That kind of a shot. That's not a fluke. That doesn't come every day. So it's good to see that one. Now, they also traded Mike Burke to Colorado, and I watched him last night's play, and man, I know Mike from he was a captain of the Major Series Brampton team for a number of years, and a great guy, hard worker, leader. So I think that will be missed in Rochester, but for him to land in Colorado, they just got stronger, without a doubt.
Definitely.
Panther City released Adam Peroni and Ben Doherty from the active roster. Vegas got busy. They signed Marshall King to a 2-year agreement, placed him on the active roster from the holdout list, which answers that question for us. They also signed James Barkley, Chris Merle, Hudson Bearden, and Jack Hanna to 1-year agreements. Seeing Hanna on there, that puts it a little bit curious to me. But I think he can probably, if he can work the inside game, be quite a force.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
They also signed Reed Reinhold to a 1-year agreement and placed him on the active roster from the injured reserve list, and he's going to be a big asset to them. Busy week, guys. busy week.
Yeah,
a lot going on, and
Halifax,
there's going to be a lot more starting tomorrow, probably. So.
Halifax and Calgary still have. Well, in Calgary, they released Cordell Hastings from the holdout list, released Jacob Motiuk and Jackson Gillis from their active roster. Now, Halifax, they released Tanner Cole, Steve Bertelli, John McConvey, Darius Anderson, Riley Johnson, Marty Hill from their active roster. Placed Braden Hill on the active roster from the holdout list. Placed Dawson Theed on the holdout list. That's an interesting one too.
Not really. I think he's still in school doing the hockey thing.
Yeah, but they certainly went through a lot of trouble to get him and to keep him.
They did, but I think they kind of knew that they were going to be, only getting him for, kind of a part-time deal. More or less, maybe, the break in January, and then, the break in April and onward,
Sure.
if his college team isn't,
right,
to like a Frozen Four or something.
And also they signed Johnny Pearson to a 1-year agreement.
Yeah, so that could be a temporary, maybe a temporary solution on the left side for Theed. So,
all right. So Patrick, you'll fill us. Who's going to be the toughest team in the division? What should I look out for? We were actually talking about this off air, Patrick, and we've narrowed it down to a couple. Toronto being one of them. We've debated about Buffalo and the age factor on them. Halifax working about some unfinished business, also being a really strong team. Those are the two that I would suggest that are going to be the ones to look out for the Wings.
Yeah. Well, that feels kind of like a two-part question. Obviously the with Toronto and Buffalo and Halifax, being the toughest teams in the division. The team to look out for, I think, though, if you're a Wings fan, is that rivalry with Georgia is just it's honestly, the only rivalry I might consider right now, putting down as better than that right now in the entirety of the league would be San Diego, Vancouver. But Georgia and Philly, it's the last 6 or 7 games now, I think,
right,
have all been 1-goal games, including the game that basically got Philly into the playoffs and knocked Georgia out at the end of last year. So, that's a real big rivalry. And, I'm sure some Wings fans out there are going to be a little disappointed that it's not, they're if they've been watching since the days of MILL, obviously there's no team in Detroit anymore, but, at that point it was
or Boston for that matter.
Yeah, it was pretty much Buffalo was their big rival if it wasn't, the New York Saints. But, since Philly's kind of come back into the league, at first it was obviously New England, because, they stole their franchise,
Old Wings, new Wings.
However, yeah, exactly. So it was that briefly. I mean, they've had a decent rivalry with New England as Albany now, but I really think that Georgia has really kind of become their thorn in the side. Those games have been unreal, and unfortunately it's kind of a little bit was born out of that whole mess with the in-game announcer in Philly. But and it's
talk about adding fuel to the fire that didn't need to be added.
Yeah, and I hate. I mean, I hate to go off on a huge tangent with this, but for anyone who's watching or who is a Wings fan or who wants to share our podcast with other Philly fans. I think they, I'd like to think that most of the fan base understands in Philly, understands that there was a little bit more to what happened with that in-game announcer and making those comments about, snipping the braid of Lyle Thompson. There's a lot more to that than any of their other sports teams and, doing what they do and, razzing the other teams, fan bases and stuff like that. Fortunately,
that one kind of crossed the line.
Yeah, and fortunately, there's been positives. I'll admit myself that I was a little critical of the Wings and kind of how they handled it. Not that they didn't handle it, but I felt like it took a little longer than it should. It probably wasn't until about a month later, maybe, that they kind of put out like a sort of a kind of a PSA with Frank Brown, who was on the team at the time and who was Native American and who was one of their top defenders, to kind of explain, maybe kind of the crux of, what it meant and how the league needs to fight the racism and all that. And,
Sure.
I think that, the Every Child Matters initiative, that's kind of, I don't want to say it's directly come out of that, but certainly the NLL has really stepped up, with their NLL Unites program, with the Every Child Matters. I think we're seeing more with just about every team in the league, has a theme night for Native American, Heritage Night or recognition.
Indigenous Night, yeah.
And that's huge for the sport. Obviously, the in-game announcer got fired. I think rightly so.
Actually, to be honest, he got reassigned.
Oh,
he was reassigned. He's still with Comcast, but
he is.
He was reassigned. He will never get near a microphone again for them, but he was reassigned. This comment from John. One time there was an NLL rule book about penalties due to announcers. I want to hold that thought because when he comes on, I want to ask him about that because I think that's a really interesting topic.
Yeah,
definitely.
But just to get to a couple of things before we move forward, of course, here are all of our shows, and remember the episodes are streamed live across Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. And you can catch all the action on www.eopsports.com. Remember to hit subscribe, follow, and always share it with your family and friends. Enjoy all the affiliates. As you see, we have shows every day of the week. Something for everyone, really. Enjoy the Broad Street Bully podcast, Philly Press Box Radio, Edge of Philly Sports, Birds IQ, Patterson Avenue Fanatics, Talking Philly Sports with Matty B, Devereaux Sports, Painted Lines, Party on Broad, all these things, Clear the Ice, all the other things that they have going on. If you missed a show, no worries. You can catch it on podcast, on any of the podcast companies at iTunes, Google Play, TuneIn, Stitcher, or Spotify. And you can also catch it on YouTube on the EOP YouTube page. Remember that you can stay up to date on all sports by visiting eopsports.com with great articles from our huge staff of contributors. And you can subscribe to our weekly newsletter, and you can also do that at eopsports.com. The interesting thing I told you about the Philly sports trips, that they were talking about, one, Indianapolis, which is next week, sold out. New York, sold out. They're working on the Chicago trip for the 18th of December. So get in touch with these guys at phillysportstrips.com. Tell them that the EOP boys sent you, and they will hook you up. So, something that I was remiss at last week, imagine that, I forgot to do something. If it ain't written down, it ain't happening. It's just that simple. My sometimer's acting up. It's not full blown Alzheimer's. It's sometimer's. And I I left out the Ontario Lacrosse Hall of Fame. Last Sunday did their inductions. And a few names. Number one, Scott Evans, basically the Rochester Nighthawk fame, but also the Peterborough Lakers. He played 5 seasons of OLA Junior A, where he was one of the top 10 scorers every season, finishing with 266 goals, 219 assists, for a total of 485 points in 140 games over his junior career, averaging 3.4 points per game. Won the most outstanding player in Junior A in 2001. 13 seasons in major series, scoring 624 goals, 645 assists, for a grand total of 1,269 points in just 383 games. He was a key player on 5 Mann Cup championship teams with the Lakers. And in 2005 and 6, Scott won the Buckle McDonald Award as the league's top scorer over 9 seasons in the National Lacrosse League. He tallied 457 points in 126 games. Those are definitely Hall of Fame numbers. Walter Goodleaf. And Butch Goodleaf was an outstanding athlete in every sport he played, including lacrosse. Admired for his consistently tough defensive play, he was also a goal scorer, making him a constant threat at a time when players played both ends of the floor. Playing for the Conewaga Indians, Walter had special ability to anticipate and shut down all offensive threats. His talent at picking up loose balls, together with his speed, agility, and playmaking skills, allowed him to ignite offensive opportunities. Respected for his unselfish play and dedication to his team, Walter was a leader on every team he played for, often earning him the role of captain. Troy Cordingley. What can we say about Troy? What a career he had as a player. What a career he's had as a coach. Throughout his playing career, Cordingley was known for his intense competitive style, which could also translate into his coaching style. Matched with a high level of skill. He played the majority of his OLA career as a Brampton Excelsior, but also played for 6 Nations in Major Series Lacrosse, plus 3 seasons in Coquitlam, 1 as a junior and 2 as a major in the Western Lacrosse Association. Played 5 seasons of Junior A with Brampton. In his first season, he played 20 games as a midget-age player. Over his entire Junior A career, Cordingley was also always among league's top scorers. He scored 304 goals, added 309 assists, for a total of 613 points in 159 games. In his single season with Coquitlam, Cordingley tallied 158 points in 35 games. In major series, Troy Cordingley thrived during a lengthy career. He scored 440 goals, 711 assists, for a grand total of 1,151 points in 338 games. He played on 4 Mann Cup championship teams, twice with Brampton, twice with 6 Nations. Cordingley also played 10 seasons in the National Lacrosse League. After finishing up his career playing, he became a successful coach, winning 2 Mann Cup championships, plus numerous minor lacrosse and provincial championships as well. Let's not forget the championship he won with Calgary and with Toronto in the NLL. Also a good assistant GM as well. Roxanne Curtis. For more than a quarter century, through her leadership, commitment, and dedication to the game, Roxanne Curtis made a significant contribution to women's field lacrosse as a coach, team, and league executive. She is well known for her strength in developing the foundation for organizations within her community, within the province, and nationally. Roxanne was instrumental in developing coaching programs at the high school level, provincial, and national levels. She has served as Lacrosse Canada Master Course Conductor since 1999 until present, and co-authored the NCCP Women's Field Lacrosse Certification Program. Literally hundreds of coaches have benefited from her efforts in this area. Roxanne also coached with the Canada Under-19 Women's Team 1996 to 99, Team Ontario Under-20 from 94 to 2008, and Sinclair Secondary School 1994 to present. And also Jennifer Johnson. A native of Brooklyn, Ontario, Jennifer Johnson is regarded as the most prominent field lacrosse player of her time. Starting out in the minor box program Whitby. She transitioned to field lacrosse in high school and developed into a world-class field lacrosse player. At the national level, Johnson played for Team Ontario, competing at the Senior National Championships, winning silver in 92 and 93, and gold in 94, 95, and 97. Internationally, she represented Canada from 95 to 2005. The Canadian under-19 team competed at the inaugural World Championships in 95 with Johnson as co-captain. She played on Canada's World Cup teams in 2001 and 2005 as captain, and was the only Canadian named to the 12-player all-world team after the 2005 competition. Johnson also had an illustrious college career, playing for the Penn State Nittany Lions from 96 to 99. She finished her career at Penn State ranked among the school's all-time top 10 players in goals scored, 136, assists, 64, and total points of 200. As a coach, Johnson's career included 2 years as an assistant coach with Cornell University and the University of Connecticut. She went on to serve as head coach with the University of Vermont, 2004 to 16, and became the winningest coach in Vermont history with 89 wins. She also headed up the coaching staff for the Canadian under-19 team in 2007 and was inducted into the Whitby Sports Hall of Fame in 2017. And that is your class of 2022. What a class, guys.
Awesome. Well deserved.
Definitely.
And Dave, what's going on, Dave? Hope you're doing well. Over here. Green Bay had beat Dallas in overtime, and that was a hell of a game. McCarthy's homecoming, and well, you know, it is what it is. We're sorry, Dave. Argos won. Anyways, we have more to cover, but it is that time, guys. It is that time. And that time, of course, is Inside the Box with John Craig, as something tells me.
Sorry, just in case they get out of hand, I'm ready.
Oh my. And the gauntlet has been thrown yet again. Now, of course, I have to ask you about this before we get rolling. What about this rule book thing about penalties due to announcers?
Yeah,
it had to do a lot with the Colorado announcer too.
Actually, it was a Rochester announcer. A Rochester announcer back, I want to say 2004, got really stupid and incited one of our guys in the penalty box, and Darius lost his freaking mind. And I'm just leafing through because I said, well, gee, there's got to be some rule that the announcers can't incite something. And we found it. It was brought up to the referee after the game because he wouldn't listen, and it was brought up to the league. And in fact, the team can be penalized for the stupidity of an announcer or any of their minor officials. I don't know if it's in there now, but I do have my NLL rule book, and I'll send you a picture of it. But it was just a weird thing that I looked it up that game. But yeah, because the announcers can influence a game, they can also set off your fan base.
Absolutely. We've seen that a number of times.
Yeah, so it was in there.
Because like I said, I remember I can't even remember his name. He was a DJ in Colorado. Whatever, Mr. B or whatever his name was. But he got one of the opposing players going so much that he wanted to fight him. So
yeah, that happened in Rochester with us too. I want to say it was Troy Montier, but I can't be 100% sure. I just know it was stupid, and I wanted to whip things off the bench at that point.
I actually used that penalty record. Yeah, I actually used that clip in one of my Fisticuff Friday ones. I should look it up and bring her back out for.
Yeah, I wish you would.
Yeah,
because I will. I remember that one. There was another announcer. Where was the Titans announcer when they played over in wasn't when they were playing in New Jersey or somewhere.
Yeah, they were the New York Titans first before they went to Orlando.
Yeah, he was a doozy too because there was he did a lot of stupid things.
Well, they played to a lot of empty chairs because they're in Madison Square Garden. They always come as your favorite empty chair night.
Madison Square Gardens, where the locker room for the NL teams had turds from the Rats, but hey, I mean, literally turds coming down the wall.
Awesome.
But
awesome. On that note, what do you got for us?
Okay, where am I going today? Right, that's what you want to know. Training camps. You guys are talking about training camps, and the one thing that a lot of people don't see is what is behind the scenes. Generally when they think of training camps, okay, we're thinking of guys making the team, we're thinking of running, we're thinking of drills, we're thinking of that. But they're all little things that roll into a training camp, because the coaches don't just evaluate talent per se, what a man or a player can do with a stick. They're evaluating that player personality, how he fits, so on and so forth. And some players are very unique. And one that comes to mind, and if you've ever been to Grimsby, Gary, you'll understand this, coldest rink I've ever been in. We had this guy trying out for us, and he made the team. Defender, his name was Pete Ragnar. And Pete passed away since. Good guy, great guy. But Pete, when he would run with the team, we have to have a separate bucket for Pete. His nickname was Puker Pete, because he'd do a lap. I mean, when he started running, he started puking. We just never knew why. But when he played really well. Pete was just one of those guys with a personality. I got to have him too when I was with the Niagara Hawks for the Can-Am. He's just a personality. He was a great guy. And I wrote my story down here, and I got to put on my glasses here. And then you have things like the underwear races, which was caught on film by the reality show we were supposed to do, The Axe, but Steve Friola, who we call Baby Huey, racing Mark Steinhaus in his underwear. Now, I'm going to tell you, it had to be like 10 below in that place. God bless them both. I think it was either Sean Williams or JT was at the finish line. Oh, no, it was Patty McCready. And he was going, Steinhaus is the winner. You suck, Baby Huey. Anyway.
Oh, my.
Let's see. Oh, God. In one of my favorite training camps, back when we used to practice, and I was the assistant equipment manager in North Tonawanda, at Sportplex, the physical, the trainer at that time would have the guys do bench presses, 150 pounds. I don't know if you remember a player named Timmy Bomberry.
Yes, I do.
Well, we actually had to stop him at 65 reps of 155 pounds. He just woo. And I'm counting, and I just remember the trainer go, Tim, you can stop now. I think you beat everybody. Tim goes, I had another 80 winning me, but it was just some of the things you would see at training camp built. It would build the camaraderie with the guys. But the last story is my favorite. And I was still the assistant at this time too. And we were playing a 4-team scrimmage. And I want to say Montreal and Syracuse was one team. I can't remember. I know Montreal was, so I don't know who the other three were. But so it's Saturday morning. We're supposed to kick it off. Our goalies are stranded at the border. Something about, and Gary helped me with this because I know I got the first letter right, P4, P2, whatever they had to show to work in the States.
Right.
So they were caught on the border. And at this time, this is when Dominic Kostiuk was playing for the Sabres. And he's out doing some stretches in the hallway. And, we're trying to figure out what to do because we're up next. And Dominic was looking at the equipment and he asked me questions about it. And I let him, grab one of the goalie sticks and stuff. And we were talking to Hayes. And so Kurt Silcott ran by and said, we're still out goalies. What are we going to do? And he went in the locker room. I looked at Dominic. Hey, Dominic, do you want to play goalie for us? Oh, no, I don't think I can do that. I said, Dominic, I'll throw in some vodka. But he came out and watched the scrimmage when our goalie got there 2 minutes before we were supposed to start, and that's when they were doing the referee training too. But that was so funny. He was picking up equipment. And he goes, "How do they throw it? How do they do this?" And then he came out to the bench and he watched the game. A bunch of Sabres used to come and watch us, like when they were training. They'd come out, when we were doing shoot around or something, and they'd watch, and I think a couple of times there were a couple of guys that played lacrosse that came out and threw with our guys. Mm-hmm. I can't remember. It's been a while, but yeah, training camp is more than just talent, because you got to have pieces of the puzzle that fit. And when you're saying, well, this guy got let go and this guy, was a good player, you begin to wonder if it was the fit or too many at that position or a little of both. Because a lot of times I've seen guys come through the Bandits organization who have great skills, but there were fit problems, and they didn't mesh with the other guys. Like when you can't get along with somebody like Johnny Travaris, who gets along with almost anybody in the world,
right?
That's a fit problem. So it's more than just guys playing the game. It's the whole picture. And a lot of fans go, well, why'd they let that guy go? He was so wonderful. Well, maybe he was wonderful with that team and not this team. You think of the guys that have gone through Toronto that maybe lasted a season and a half. People in Buffalo, Luke Wiles, who I love, didn't last long with us. Mm-hmm. Roy Coldley, who had a great shot, not so long. Good guy, though, but different teams require different fits. And that 2008 team that we had, they were like brothers. They were like you could call any one of them at 3 a.m. and they would be there.
Right.
So that's what fans miss too. I mean, if I was a fan, I would just think our GM was being dumb, but a lot of times they're not. They see it, and Chugger's a team guy. Of anybody that sees team, Chug is the one, because he never was concerned with himself. He was always concerned with how the team did. And that's what a lot of teams look for. They look for that. So there's a lot of behind the things, a lot of hazing, actually, not, really bad, but goofy stuff they make the rookies do. Like picking up cones or running with cones on their heads, all that fun stuff. But that's a part of it. So that's my take. I didn't make you guys laugh as much as normal, but
there's still time.
Yeah, but I think you definitely bring up a good point. I mean, we often find ourselves saying when we see guys get cut, well, it's just a numbers game, but that also maybe corresponds to just the fact that there's a lot more guys trying out now. We've got a lot of guys coming from the U.S. trying to get into box. So competition's stiffer. So I mean, if we didn't have that, we'd probably be shifting what we say, about guys getting cut, that, it would probably trend more towards, hey, it just wasn't really a good fit here,
And guys that didn't fit on other teams fitting on Buffalo or vice versa. I mean, you look at somebody like, I thought Kim Squire was a better fit in Toronto than he was in Buffalo. Kim's a good guy, but I think he fit better in the Toronto system. Clay Hill, who was an afterthought for most teams, fit on that Buffalo defense because he was Darris Jr., just the way he played. So coaches, fans have to learn to trust or learn more about the game, so they understand where the coach they're coming from. Sure. Because if you would have told me that Kevin Dostie was going to make that big of an impact all season and in a playoff game, I would have went, the guy's shorter than I am. What's he going to do? Tickle the referee's backside? I mean, come on. But Kevin Dostie was amazing. Go back to that Portland game, the one goal. He made 3 goals in that game. He took pounding after pounding. That's what teams are about. I mean, if you've ever coached and you're good at spotting that. I had a team that just the league did not want to touch the organization. They gave me all the kids that probably should have been in juvenile detention. Okay, we went 28-4-5. My one defender scored 58 goals in 20 games. He walked on to the prep school in Boston. Had he not done something stupid, he was being scouted by the Bruins organization. When he was 13, he was 6'4", 245 pounds.
Ouch.
Wow.
When he hit people, they stayed down. But he was, that mesh of kids worked. Mm-hmm. With who I was, with who they were, that's how coaches are. And I think fans, if you're going to be a fan, you got to kind of open up your mind and understand the game more instead of complaining about rules. Because if you complain about a rule and you don't understand it, that's like, I don't know. I have good analogies, but I can't say them right now. But
I get it.
Oh, I meant to say congratulations, Argos. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a long, cold afternoon, let me tell you what.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, we'll have a colder afternoon next week, hopefully raising another trophy.
So, Shawn, you going to go out and root for the Argos?
No, I don't have that much money to spend on a Grey Cup. And stay out there in -30 just doesn't sound appetizing to me.
Yeah.
It's still 70 out here, boys. I was out riding my motorcycle. It was like 75 degrees, and people were looking at me funny yesterday. I go, really? I went to a veteran thing, and it's like, you rode your motorcycle? Yeah, that's why I ride it. But yeah, so I'm listening to you guys talk about all the training camps and some of the names that are being let go. And they'll probably find places for these guys, but maybe it's not. I know how Troy is very team oriented. He's got to have pieces that fit his vision. Mm-hmm. And if he doesn't see it, he'll let him go. And it might sound weird to their fan base, but he's a pretty good evaluator of talent. I've been around him. I've listened to him, listened to Chug. I've listened to a lot of guys, and they know their stuff when you're hearing it, and then you see the guy play for your team or for another team, and he does okay, but you listen to what your coach says and go, how's he going to fit here? You know? Yeah. It's like Billy D and Mark. If you would have seen them play for Columbus, they look like two monkeys humping a football, actually. And Mark, they would tell you the same thing. They were just all over. Darius took those two and made them decent players because he rode them hard, but he knew their potential.
Right.
Yep. So that's you look at any good coach, like Toronto's coach. Troy and Sean Williams, you guys, all good coaches out there. They're looking for what's going to drive them to that next level. And that's why, as somebody that sat in the locker rooms and heard things that I can't repeat,
of course,
it's just amazing to see how they put things together. And I've sat at meetings where they actually are going, I've watched them move them across the board and go, oh, geez, I didn't think that guy could be there. But it's kind of interesting to see it. And if you could ever actually sit in a coach's room when they're doing this, it will blow your mind. Because things you think you know, you don't know.
Right.
And that's it for this week, guys. And Mike, where's your fan club, man? Where is your fan club?
Dwindling. They're getting ready for camp. They don't have time for a parade.
We need that parade, Gary. Come on.
Yeah, I know. And pretty soon the weather's going to stop us out east here.
And yes, I've been all the things you've been sending me. I've been correcting the remedial writing.
Awesome.
I'm ready to start drinking more now. Thank you.
Awesome. Oh my. Anyways, until next week, I was inside the box with John Craig. He is seen here every single week midway through our program with amusing anecdotes and informative. I love it. I absolutely love it. All right, so guys, we had not one, not two, we had 7 preseason games over the last couple of days. And just to get everybody caught up on who did what. Friday night, San Diego played Vegas, and it was an 18-9 drubbing of Vegas by San Diego. The Saturday night, we had Calgary beat Rochester 11-9. Halifax lost to San Diego 18-14. And the highlight of that night, guys, was a little bit of a dust-up. And here we go. Brody Merrill, of course, in the forefront. But wait, there's more. And that was our to-do. Just a little bit of fun and festivity in that particular game. The other game on Saturday night was Colorado and Toronto. And again, I was at the game, and it was really interesting because both teams really used the majority of their A squads. And a couple of things that stood out to me was, number one, if you're worried about Logan Wisniewski's fitting into a box lacrosse idea, don't. He looked like he's played it all his life. If you're worried about Kahn fitting in, don't worry. He looks like he's played it most of his life. Colorado was leading through most of that game. It took a 7-goal fourth quarter by the Toronto Rock, holding Colorado to nothing. That took them from a 12-9 deficit to win 16-12. Now, the big scorer in that particular game, Josh Dawick, Jamie Dawick's son. What a great way to make an imprint in your very first preseason game with the squad you want to make. And 3 of those 4 goals, I believe, were against Dylan Ward, so they weren't cheapies. They were good, high-powered shots from just beyond the arc. So he's looking like he's fitting in very nicely. So the next day, which was today, this morning there was 2 games. One was a 10 a.m. game with Saskatchewan and Buffalo. And if anybody's a little bit concerned about Buffalo, maybe a bit, Saskatchewan thumped them 15-6. Now, I do realize it's preseason, and I do realize everybody's trying different things. But Buffalo is still Buffalo, right? And they only got 6 goals. Now,
yeah,
I realize...
I think it's sad lost starters, too, in that game. So I think Shanahan saw most of the time in net.
That's another concern, because we've touted him so highly coming out of WLA, and he got thrashed. So, I don't know if having this kind of scoring power, because, again, Saskatchewan's offense is no slouch, and you can attest to that, Shawn.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as we're mentioning off air, if you get a chance to see it, it's on Twitter. Marshall Palace's pass to Ethan Forgrave. It was ridiculous. Behind the back pass for a quick stick. That offense is going to click. And again, Palace and Forgrave, those are guys battling for spots. And they're looking like they're in mid-season form. Right.
And our last game of the day was, Halifax, Vegas. Halifax beat Vegas 15-12. If I didn't mention it, Albany beat Calgary 16-9. The thing that's sitting in with me with Halifax, Mike, is I expect more from their defense than what we're seeing here. They lost 18-14 to San Diego. Now, granted, that's a high-powered all-star team. But Vegas is not a high-powered all-star team, and they got 12. Does this put a warning bell in there anyway, a red flag? Or is it just preseason and, whatever?
I mean, I'm tempted to chalk it up just to preseason. But certainly if they had the A squad that they plan to have come opening night, then there could be a concern, and you have to wonder, could it be more than just losing guys like Brad Gillies, I think they, obviously Graham Hossack, what can't you say about him? He's a 3-time defensive player of the year, running the show there. But they have some good veterans, guys like Luke Magnan, and they have some really good young talent, in Duncan Thompson, Trevor Smith, Colton Armstrong. So I'd be a little concerned, but there's a few more weeks to iron things out. So
right, because that segues me into we were talking about pending questions heading from training camps to the regular season, and we touched on the East last week a little bit. I had one more really pressing one about the East, and that's with Halifax. And will they take care of their unfinished business? What do you think, Mike?
I'd like to think so. I just think some other teams have seemingly gotten stronger over the offseason, specifically Toronto, Rochester, Philadelphia, Georgia.
It's tough, isn't it? It's tough. A couple things to think about, though, with added guys is Benesh is back, right? Stotts is there, right?
Right.
Reese Dutch is back healthy. So there are players. Shanks will come back at some point. So there is enough firepower, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and they'll get periodic sightings of Dawson Theed, between his breaks with collegiate hockey. So
because remember, they gave up Stephane LeBlanc for him, right?
They did. I would think if there's anyone I really maybe want to see step up on the offense for Halifax, for me, I think it needs to be Eric Fennell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think he's the one who really needs to kind of,
you saw him in the fight there with Brody Merrill, right? So he's stepping up.
Well, and they, they've stuck with him. He has shown plenty of plenty of moments where that basically kind of validate, them keeping him on the roster. I just think he needs to maybe see a little more consistency out of him, where you can be counting on him for several points a night, and to not kind of disappear.
All right. So we've talked about the East. So I want to talk a little bit about the West tonight. I want to start off with the juggernaut that we call the All-Star team in San Diego. And my biggest question has been, as well as a number of people also, is there's only one ball. Can all this offensive talent mesh together? Shawn, what do you think?
It's possible. Definitely anything's possible with the right coaching. I look at San Diego. Well, they pretty much have the exact same team Calgary had a number of years ago with Dixon and Doby. And they were really strong teams during the regular season. But because they're aging, they kind of started to peter out near the end. And they couldn't really get to that next level of winning a championship. So there may be one ball, but how long can that last through a whole season? That's my question.
See, I always reckon it to the, being a Dutch guy, the Dutch soccer team. And they have always had perennially great teams with all-stars all over the place. But because they were all all-stars, they never got along and they never had that cohesive thing. Hence, they never won a World Cup because there was only one ball and 5 stars out there. So my point in this is really, when you're looking at Berg, Crowley, Dixon, Doby, Jackson, O'Keefe, Stotts, and the list goes on, everybody is a star from a different spot. and now you're on the same team. Can everybody check their egos in the dressing room and get to the point at hand of winning games together? I'd like to say yes, because I know a number of them are very, very good team guys, but they've always been at the top of the food chain.
That's what I think really comes down to coaching. That really comes down to coaching, right? I think in the end, are these guys going to buy into the system? If they can buy in the system, that's what it's all about, right? If you buy in the system, it's like you said, one ball, you're going to be just fine. But if they're not going to buy into the system, they all just want to be the goal scorers, be the stars, be the big shots, so to speak.
Okay, so that leads to the next question then. With Pat Merrill and Josh Sanderson, are these the guys that can tame all these egos? Think about the Toronto Blue Jays of 1992-93 fame and having all those all-stars on it. And the one person who never really got the credit was Cito Gaston, thinking, well, yeah, look at all the stars. Of course, any one of us could have met. Not a chance. With all that ego in there and to make sure they all bought into the team plan, that came down to Cito and him being able to put everybody together. Is Merrill and Sanderson those kind of guys that are able to preach teamwork first? Mike would think.
I think so. I think they can. I really think they can find a way to make it work. If anything, obviously it was mentioned that there are several former Calgary Roughnecks on the team now. Mm-hmm. Maybe the fact that they came in kind of staggered might help versus if they'd all shown up this year.
Yeah.
Some of the guys who've been there kind of since the beginning, guys like Jackson and Stotts, have had a chance now to play with Berg for a couple of years, had a chance to play with Doby for 1 year. Now they get the chance to play with Dixon. If I guess I would be maybe most concerned that the familiarity with Dixon, Doby, Berg maybe starts to potentially erode things where it's like, okay, hey, we used to all play together and now we're going to kind of keep all playing together. And, two-man game suddenly becomes, Dixon and Berg on the right side. And it's like, okay, well, you realize you have, a number one pick and former number one pick in Kevin Crowley there too, who's mm-hmm. pretty skilled himself. So
absolutely.
Well, that maybe brings to another point is some guys like Crowley are maybe not going to see as much floor time. Is that going to kind of eat away as well to the chemistry of the team?
It's a good point.
It's possible, and there's always the possibility that too, with the way rosters are made up, sometimes you have a game where your two scratches are both going to be forwards instead of a forward and a defenseman. Ideally, with your 21, you got your two goalies. Generally you're going to run 8 forwards. So you're going to have 11 on defense, and you're going to usually scratch 1 forward and 1 defenseman. Do they find themselves, maybe in a situation where they need to scratch 2 forwards and concentrate on defense?
So it brings us back to John's point too, right? About the cohesiveness and how they're going to put this team together. Because we're going to scratch our heads at a lot of the cuts we're about to see. Because they still have, 40 people in camp? 35 of which are NLL caliber?
Yeah. In some cases, yeah.
So when the cuts start coming down, we're going to have to think about what John just told us. And about the cohesion on how that works to the vision of Merrill and Sanderson. And that's why I was asking, are these the guys to lead it? Is their vision strong enough that they can get the rest of these guys to buy into it? That when they do make these cuts, you're not dividing the room.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? A team of individuals doesn't make a championship.
Never has, never will.
Yeah, and I guess maybe your barometer for measurement out west is Panther City.
See, that's my next. That was my next question. My next question
because Yeah, because
can they take the next
Tracy
step?
Kostiuk got them to buy into the system right around the time they picked up Milligan and Farrell in the middle of the season. And,
right.
They rattled off 5 straight, and, some fans in other cities kind of laughed as it was unfolding, but, they put themselves in a position to potentially get a playoff spot. So,
yeah, that's what we're talking about, right? Yeah, transition and buying into the system. It's exactly. But yeah, that was my next question, Mike, is Panther City. And are they ready to take that next step?
I think so. I have to look. I have to look at how they perform the second half of the season, and I have to think most of that offensive unit is going to remain intact.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to add Jonathan Donville, which is only going to make it better.
Yeah.
That right side's going to be deadly. That left side's going to be very savvy.
Because we talk about Milligan and we talk about Farrell, but we don't really talk too much about the resurrection of the Caputo career.
Yeah, that's a
huge thing because he was flailing away between Toronto and Rochester. He just never found his character. He was back and forth between transition and defense, which was strange in Toronto for an offensive player. And I know it from watching him in Brampton, of course. And then in Rochester, he finally was getting an offense, but then it wasn't a stable thing. He wasn't getting a stable shift. And now he got into Panther City and resurrected his career. He was a force. Even before Farrell and Milligan came on, he was one of the bright sides, him and Grennan. And they're there. So is Farrell. So is Patrick Dodds. And I say, now we got Donville in there as well. They just got stronger. And again, with Tracy Kostiuk and buying into the system, there's nobody that isn't putting team first there. And it showed in the second half. Even though they finished 7-11, a good chunk of that damage was done at the very beginning.
Yeah. I mean, 1-8 to start, and then to finish the second half of the season 6-3 I thought was impressive. With the 5-game win streak,
and almost made the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think it goes to what John Craig was saying earlier about, just finding some guys finding the right place, and Panther City's the right place for Phil Caputo.
Also for Nick DeMood.
Yeah.
So he seemed to find his niche there.
Honestly, it's the right place for a number of guys. I think it's the right place for Liam Burns. I think it's the right place for Liam Patton. I think it's the right place for Will Malcolm.
What do you think is it, though? Is it that there's not as much pressure as a place like Buffalo or Philadelphia or Toronto, where everybody knows everybody and everybody is on top of any time there's even the slightest adjournment from where they should be? Because in Panther City, you can go under the radar.
I think you could make that argument. That it's new team, a new market. I think, I certainly think that it's entirely possible that, the first half of the season last year, maybe they were putting a little too much pressure on themselves, thinking, hey, new market, we really got to succeed. We got to bring the fans in, sure. Looking at some of the games last year, Dickies Arena is a big arena. It seats, I think, 14,000, somewhere around 14,000. The only other tenant right now is the Dallas Wings of the WNBA. I'm trying to think offhand. I think they did end up in the upper half in attendance, or close to it. They were somewhere around the middle of the pack. So, maybe surprising to think, if you're looking at it one way, if you're looking at it from the perspective of Panther City, not so much maybe if you're one of the teams that was averaging less fans, over the course of the year than the new team. that would be a little concerning to those teams maybe. But it was easy to maybe watch a game and kind of see, stands kind of look empty. How the guys feel about that. Because
got a point there too. It's a new market with minimal lacrosse IQ to start, so it's a good place to start. And again, under the radar.
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah. I mean, I think by the middle of the season, maybe they kind of had that because they were 1-8 at that point. Maybe they kind of, at that point things are changing. And it's like, okay, we're gonna play loose, we're gonna have fun. We know we're not doing well, and it's almost, I want to say it's almost like flipping a switch.
Right.
Suddenly the things just started to click, and 5 in a row. The only team that scored 20 goals in a game last season.
Yep. And they were getting stronger and stronger. Now, as to John's point here, did all of you know that Dan Teed is working with Buffalo as a scout? I knew that yesterday. I saw a tweet from him. And at first it was, I shook my head at it. But yeah, because his real estate's going by, he can work as a scout. He doesn't have the time to be a coach, hence him leaving Panther City. Shawn, this next one is for you. And it's with the changes in the leadership in Saskatchewan. How will this affect the team?
Actually, I think it's going to be for the better. And we saw it at the end of last year. I think the Rush were 5-0 under Jimmy Quinlan.
Right.
After they canned McComb. Again, I love McComb, but it just wasn't. We're talking about chemistry again. It seemed like the players weren't buying into his system. It seemed like guys are enjoying playing under Jimmy Quinlan. And hey, there's always that motivation factor. If you just look up to the rafters at the SaskTel Center and see that 81 hang in there, it's enough to motivate you and know, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. So I don't think there's going to be any drop off. If anything, it's going to be we're going to see an improvement. Because again, I'm not sure what happened to McComb, but it just wasn't working, and so it's going to be a step up.
We're talking about Quinlan. Is he the one that has the good rapport then with all the young players? Because that's what Saskatchewan's going to be relying on. The guys like Bobby Kidd, Holden Garland, Marshall Palace. That's the future. Is Quinlan the guy that's going to be the one who can be the liaison between the veteran and the youth?
And I feel like he can be. I mean, he's a former player himself. So, I mean, he's been in their shoes. He knows what they're going through. I don't see why he can't be.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you have anything to add on that?
No, I think Shawn hit the nail on the head there. Mm-hmm. I think having the that's a good question right there.
Very good question.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that question.
I
wish I had one.
Who falls on the sword if it doesn't work? Is it Quinlan or is it an offensive coordinator? Is it Keenan?
Now, I was going to say, or does that fall on Keenan? And that's a tough question.
Because you kind of stuck there because Keenan, I think he's untouchable.
Yeah, I mean,
I also feel like he's going to take the responsibility though, if that does happen.
Would he fall on his sword? Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think because he really co-coached with Quinlan those last few games, even though he claims that it was really Quinlan who did most of it. But so I think Quinlan's his guy, really his guy, and maybe he will fall on the sword.
Okay. I want to touch on one more for this week, and we're going to call it a week, and then we can touch some more on the West and whatever thoughts came across us on the East next week, and basically the last week of training camp. Calgary, can they have a sustainable offense this year? Shawn, let's start with you.
I don't know. I really feel like that's a team like one injury away from tanking. I know that sounds bad, but I mean, bringing in Hickey, still have Jesse King. Hayden Dixon had a great summer. Pace played well last year, as did Haywire. But is that enough? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like you maybe have Jesse, you have King and Hickey, but other than that, yeah, you don't have much for secondary scoring, which is the exact same issue they had last year.
Do you put more pressure on Zach Currier to be a more offensive kind of guy? He's already a transition king there, but do we put more? Do we do the Challen Rogers to Zach Currier?
Oh,
Just
again, do you mess with that chemistry?
That's the other. It's a very, very. It's a tightrope that we're walking. Mike, Would you have anything to add on that? I know it's a sticky one because I too think that they're a little thin.
I would say no. I think you need with Zach Currier. I think it's don't fix what isn't broken.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you need to leave him in the role that he's been doing because he's been doing it so well.
Okay, so let's rephrase it then. Do they rely more on the transition game than say King's having not a good night? Say Pace isn't up to snuff. So one of these guys are hurt. Do they rely more on Callies, Salama, Simpson?
Yeah.
One of these guys have to step up there. We see
and not only those guys. I want to start seeing more out of Matsuoka and Ticehurst. They drafted them high. They drafted them high for a reason, mainly because of their speed.
Mm-hmm.
Ticehurst is probably one of the 5 fastest guys in the game right now.
Right.
He even saw it last year. Sorry.
Yeah. I think they need to cut him loose and let him do his thing.
Right. Shawn, you want to pick up on that?
I was just going to say, you saw it last year. Calgary really lived and died by the transition, didn't they?
Well, sure. Most everything led with a Del Bianco
long pass. Yeah.
It's kind of a la Mike Poulin. When Georgia really wasn't rolling too well, he was doing an awful lot of that. And mostly when you see Thompson out of the lineup. And it looks like it's gone on to the Molosky theory now. And Del Bianco and the long lead pass and really trying to push that transition game. Because, again, it's as hard as it is to find really good offensive pieces, losing Dixon and Dobie in 2 consecutive years are huge blows, even though it's one piece at a time. But there's no way that you're going to stumble upon, guys like that are few and far between. You're not going to find a Jeff Teat or a Clark Peterson in every draft.
No. And once you become one-dimensional like that, as soon as the team shuts down your transition, what happens?
Mm-hmm.
You could be in trouble.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't we leave it there this week? And just a reminder to everybody about all the shows and things like that here on Edge of Philly Sports. Again, every episodes are streamed live across Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. And you can catch everything on EOPsports.com. Remember to hit subscribe, follow, and like, and always share it with family and friends. As you see, we have a ton of shows for everybody, as well as us. Make sure that you are trying to visit some of the other affiliates of ours. If you missed a show, no worries. You can grab the podcasts on any of the companies there, like iTunes, Google Play, TuneIn, Stitcher, or Spotify, as well as you can go to YouTube and go to the Edge of Philly page, and you can catch any of the shows there. Remember, you can stay up to date on all sports by visiting EOPsports.com with great articles from a huge staff of contributors in all the sports that we've seen. Subscribe to the weekly newsletter, and you can do that also at EOPsports.com. A few things that I think that we should be looking at maybe in next week's show. Yes, I want to continue along with a few more questions that are pending. We'll have more exhibition games to talk about. Probably a few more moves by teams.
Probably a lot.
Or a lot of moves by teams.
Yeah, a lot of moves.
Yeah. We'll dedicate the first half of the show to that.
Cuts.
All right. As the scroll comes out. Volume 3.
Yeah.
That's
the
probably
other thing
what
I want to start looking at is the to me it's a very interesting question, and I need to do a little research on it myself. Is the rookies that have been drafted and the impact that they're going to be making? Because so far I've seen it with a few of them. Jake Govett made an impact over the weekend. Josh Dalwick made an impact over the weekend. We already saw that Austin Hazen made an impact last week, and again this week. So, taking a look at some of the, and I don't mean going through 6 rounds of rookies. I mean going through around maybe 2 of some of the bigger picks that are playing with teams now, and seeing if they're the ones that are going to be, jump in and they're going to be, I won't say like a Jeff Teat, but somewhere in that echelon that gets discussed as much to be part of that offensive prowess.
Yeah, that will be interesting. My first answer is probably no. Just having seen guys like Austin Stotts and Jeff Teat and kind of what they've done, already. It feels like
you can throw Clark Peterson in on that one too.
Yeah, you certainly could, but I mean, it almost feels like maybe this draft, and obviously we don't know. We had the one draft the year before where we really didn't see a whole lot of guys. A lot of guys that were drafted were a year away with the NCAA transfer rules.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're not going to get to see those guys.
Should we add the PLL guys that are making their first attempt in here as part of that conversation then? The Wisniewski guys,
we certainly could, because I think it goes towards what we discussed maybe a few weeks ago with how GMs were thinking, and they went through the draft and the pause and the extra free agency period, and they tended towards known commodities going into last year.
Yeah.
And we think they're not going to this year. That they're gonna roll the dice on, outside free agents, and they're gonna roll the dice on the guys they drafted either last year coming into this year or this year coming into this year.
Right.
That they're gonna kind of take over. And for me, really, it almost begs the question: how much longer are we going to see guys playing in their late 30s and 40s?
Yeah,
sure, there are guys out there. Sure, there are guys
out
there. You have your Brody Merrills, your Dan Dawsons, your Matt Vinces, those kind of guys. But I have a feeling the kind of retirement age it's going to drop a bit. Not only is that going to drop, I feel like the window of a player's prime is going to drop too. Is going to get younger. Generally most sports
bargaining agreement too now.
But most sports where you're thinking generally a player's prime is, you're going to say what, 27 to 33, give or take a couple a year or two.
Yeah, this is
I think it's gonna very slowly shift to more like a 25 to 31 kind of.
I'm more in that ballpark with you.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Like I said, does that affect the collective bargaining agreement that they just hammered out?
Oh.
Well, I mean, they've already dropped the age, the franchise,
the
age at which you can.
Been a little bit more foresight than we are, and they've dropped that. Is there a reason for it? And is that the reason for it? Because they're seeing that the retirement age is going to be a lot lower.
They could have, and this wasn't a lawyer or a rep for the PLPA. This was Zach Currier and Reed Reinhold, who are now heading up the PLPA.
Which would be good guys to see this, right?
So very much so.
The other question that I want to delve maybe into is, we were worried that when the PLL was taking over and doing what they were doing, that they were going to destroy box by not letting their guys play in the summer. Now we see that a bunch of them have been drafted to NLL teams. Does it work as a feeder now? As if this experiment, and I'll call it an experiment just for nothing better to have a term for it, of these guys, like in the Wisnuskas or something like that, of they're being successful, will we see more attempts at the NCAA guys to come into field? Because again, we've been successful with the McCardles, we've been successful with Schreiber, we've been successful with Wisnuskas now, Kahn, Hanna. These guys are seemingly making the transition. You have a lot of guys who play box who are now also playing field for the PLL. Does it rub off on the NCAA guys, and will they be more readily available and wanting to be drafted to the National Lacrosse League and playing box? Just food for yeah. Well, JT is an exception, not the rule.
Yeah,
simple,
definitely
simple.
Yeah,
it's just like Matt Vince being an exception, not the rule. You're not going to see many 40-year-old goaltenders.
No, it's a good point because GMs are going to have to start looking at how long I'm going to hold on to these aging stars. Because I got a bunch of 20-year-olds coming up that are.
Well, it's also going to be that we talk about with things like that, but we also remember all these expansion teams have come up with blueprints kind of like Saskatchewan when they started, and their minor league lacrosse, and the players that are coming up, and grassroots and places to play, and then of course your juniors, and now with Alberta being a little bit more on the map there with success, as well as BC and Ontario and the NCAA. And I had a long conversation with Dallas Eliak this week, and we talked about PBLA and we talked about US Boxla, and a lot of this stuff is coming to the forefront to help with Mike's point of lowering what the retirement age is, because simply they can't compete with what's coming up.
Nope.
Because there's so much prep, because of things like the ALL and the PBLA, because of all that prep and coaching and having players that are coming down as well as going up, and having that kind of seasoning and that kind of knowledge, that you're having not a, for lack of a better term, not a dumb rookie. You're having somebody who knows what to expect and knows how to handle themselves and isn't going to fall into pratfalls that normally someone who's young and dumb will fall into. These are intelligent people.
Yeah, the young guys ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of them are graduates. So they're not, 18 and just, hey, all right, we're here. Let's go. I've got a stick and I have talent.
Yeah.
You have savvy people who have played 4 years of college at the highest of levels and played all the tournaments and played both box and field. So the IQ of the rookie and of what the GM is looking for is going to be substantially higher. Again, it's a win-win because they get better. They get pushed all the way through, so they get the most of what they can do. But us as fans also get the most out of what can possibly be put together as a team. So it's just something that's a little bit more interesting to look at. Yeah, go ahead, Shawn.
Yeah, I know this is a conversation for another time, but I mean, you also look at that young rookie who's coming in, who has all that prep. How many years are getting out of him out of that, 37, 38-year-old? That's probably what GM's going to look at too, right?
Right. But, well, in years past, it would have to happen at the professional level. Now it doesn't have to happen that way. Again, now these guys can be going down to the Baltimore Indoor Lacrosse League, the BILL. They can be going down to the PBLA in the U.S. They can be going down to the ALL East or West in Canada. And it's not demotion. It's not on your way out, but they could be actually working as part of the coaching staff and being part of the intelligence committee as well as the skills. So you got skills and drills, but you also have, let's just even call it a classroom situation on how to be a professional and how to hold yourself and how to stay there. It's one thing to get there. It's the next thing to stay there. And if that happens, then exactly what you're talking about, Mike, is going to happen. You're going to have the prime between 24 and 28, and 30, 31 is when you're going to see them, get out of that and probably get into the coaching biz a little bit sooner, which also helps with the rookies because you don't have somebody 52 telling them, well, when I played, when the game was entirely different, when I played and I retired 2 years ago, this is what we did and this is how we're going to do it. I think they're going to, command the respect, and they're going to get the respect. And with that, they're going to be able to put across the knowledge on how to do it. So I think there's a lot of change going to go on with the working pieces, but I think it's all for the better. And I think it's going to get more of them working longer with teams and again, the winners are us because we get to watch the best of the best, and they're all going to be doing all the work behind the scenes, through the scenes.
A lot of headaches for GMs, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just for one example, look at San Diego. I think Crowley, I think, is 34. Dixon is 33. Dobie's got to be 35, maybe somewhere in there. Would you cut any of those guys for a rookie right now?
No, but obviously we're talking exceptions, not the rule.
I mean,
on a regular team, I wouldn't cut Dan Dawson either at 40 or 41. I wouldn't cut Paul Dawson in his 40s.
Yeah,
there's been some tough decisions.
When he wants to hang him up, that's when you hang him up. But these are guys who are in tip-top shape, and this is helping their everyday jobs. Those two guys are firefighters. They need to be in that kind of a shape just to do their day-to-day work. So, well, it's one thing to be exceptions, not the rule. But I'm talking about down the road, and all the other players that are on the teams. I don't think you're going to be seeing them up in their mid-30s anymore.
No, but I think that's a good point, Mike. There's going to be some tough decisions to make.
Well, it brings us back to John's thing of compatibility and that coach's room of when they're trying to do this stuff, and it makes it that much more of a standout comment of how much goes into that, and the blueprint that we're talking about. You're talking about the blueprint of a player, but the blueprint of how you're going to put your team together.
Yeah.
And what the GM's looking and how they're going to do it and how they're going to go about it. And with those players, can they use them in their organizations as something else? And as the money comes in more so through TV contracts, God, this is 42 different things. But as the money comes into it, are they going to be able to convince the ownership to have more branches to their front office that they are able to do this when it's for the betterment of the product, hence getting more butts in the seats, hence getting more television time and more revenue through other revenue streams and merch. Very interesting in all those things. But yeah, that's for another week. But yeah, let's keep that to the forefront. Those are going to be interesting topics to continually go back to as we watch things shuffle out here. It doesn't have to be in one fell swoop that we're going to just dig in and get up their necks in it, because I got a feeling it's like Pandora's box. Once you open it, forget it, man. There's so many different routes and ways to go that there's no wrong answer. But there are a lot of different scenarios and thoughts and how we're going to how to do this. So
yeah.
But anyways, any last words, Mike? We'll start with you.
I'm just looking forward to seeing who gets released after
or
the
who
round
stays
of games this weekend, or who stays. Yeah. So I'm sure we'll see some more interesting names.
Absolutely. Shawn, any last words for the week?
Yeah, same thing. Really looking forward to seeing how training camp and preseason works out here, and keeping an eye on that transaction wire and see who's coming and who's going.
Yeah, one question that would come to mind for me now is we talked about last week was Georgia's roster was kind of on the small side, and and now with the news that both Jordan Hall and Joel White retired, is Georgia in a better position than most now, having that smaller roster that they can have their pick of guys who are newly on the street to kind of fill out, versus a team that's got 35, 40 guys and is trying to whittle down.
Yeah, I think Toronto's in that same boat because basically the lineup they put out last night was really everybody. The only person I didn't see out there was Dawson.
Yeah.
And I think they're just saving him for, again, he's 40 something. So 40,
so
41. So I don't think you really want to waste him in a preseason game. You'll give him one, whatever, just to get his legs going. But other than that, he really doesn't need it. So, but those are thoughts for another time. Me personally, I'm just excited to see now that we've brought all this stuff up, to look at it under a different guise, to see and to try and think of it from the other side instead of from the fan side of, oh wow, man, he got cut. But now my thinking is, why? Was it because he didn't mesh? Was it because of work? Is it because of a scheme what's the vision of, and trying to figure that out, which will make it a whole lot more interesting for me, or being inquisitive. And, to see before the finished products hit the weekend of December 2nd, and to see if you can kind of see the flow and how it's going to get there. Another one to think about that is Paul Day, who has definite visions on how his team should look. Just take a look at Peterborough. Again, take a look at the way he's constructed Philadelphia, and with certain things there, and when he's lost people, who he's gotten and who he's tried to get to fill in again on that blueprint, on that vision. So I want to thank everybody for hopping aboard again for another week with us. Remember, we are here every Sunday night at 9 Eastern. Don't forget to check us out at All Lacrosse All the Time on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, on www.eopsports.com/lacrosse. And for anything lacrosse related, interviews, recaps, anything to do with transactions, outlooks, there's a few more coming out this week. We have a few left to go. I think it's 4 left. Is that right, Mike? 3 left to go.
So
okay. They'll be rolling out again this week. And we'll be ready for the opening weekend of the season. So with all that in mind, again, I want to thank you for joining us, and we will see you all again next week.